So I wanted to ask, what are your favourite historical figures, and who do you think some of the worst popularised historical figures are?
Most popular historical figures and
And ones that were popular in the era that did massive damage. So like Hitler, Genghis Khan style figures. Your most loathed historical figures and your favourite historical figures.
bees. History is only 5,000 years.
He asks
Yeah.
questions like this to me every night at like 10 o'clock.
It's only 5,000 years.
Shut up and go to bed.
Favourite figures in the last
There was
200.
there was a movie called A Man for All Seasons. And it was about the time of Henry VIII and the figures in the church and the government. And it's one of the best movies I really enjoyed because it dealt with subjects of some seriousness. If you could get them subjects that I could get absorbed in because I did study a bit of medieval history or ancient history, if you like to call it. And especially it's sort of related to the Reformation and Protestantism and that kind of thing a little bit. Although the Anglican Church doesn't consider itself to be Protestant at all, it considers itself to be Catholic. That is to say, not Romish Catholic, and all the exaggerations and distortions of the Pope and his crew brought into it. So we don't regard ourselves as Protestants, although Henry VIII was in fact the leader of the Protestant movement just by default, because there was nobody else big enough to actually take place at that time. So he was more or less regarded as the leader of the Protestant movement, but he's not really Protestant. He lived and died a Roman Catholic, as did his daughters, murderous Mary and Elizabeth, who only became an actual Anglican halfway through her reign, which is 4 reigns later than Henry VIII, when the Pope disavowed her. So he created the Anglican Church, not Henry VIII at all. So I thought that was a very interesting movie. So it covered that kind of thing. Why don't movies cover that kind of subject more often instead of Superwoman or Wonder Bloody Woman or whatever they are?
Boring things, yes.
Absolutely bloody boring American crap.
Yep.
So, famous historical figures that were important. Oh God.
Or even
Rattle a few off.
He-
You
well,
won't cover them all.
Churchill, obviously, although he made a horrendous mistake in Gallipoli. Horrendous. But he turned out to be a wonderful leader at a crucial time for the world.
Not the Queen?
Elizabeth II, if you like. I always remember following the death of her father, who was an unfortunate man in his health-wise, and she was in South Africa and suddenly he's dead and she's in the position. She got up and she made that speech about, I dedicate myself now and my life to the job, you know? And she's done it. She has done it impeccably for 80 years. So, you know, nobody would put down her as a major political influence in the world in the last century. But in fact, her life has been quite exemplary in that respect. But, yeah, not that I'm going to vote for her as Prime Minister or anything. You know, you can take the Australian context, the American context, European,
Whatever
British,
you like.
Well, I suppose people and ideas that have been most influential to you that are really
Peter Sellers? Come on, Dad. Have some fun with this.
even concepts and ideas.
The Goons.
They don't have to be people that you
The
idealise.
Goons are lovely. Why don't we just rebroadcast those endlessly over? Why don't we? Just great. With the Goons, yes. So good.
British comedian. Any other
John
British
Cleese.
comedians?
Eh?
John Cleese.
Yeah, John Cleese, of course, yes. And that series he did with his
Faulty Towers.
Faulty Towers, my God. Brilliant, yeah. British humour's got to stand out.
Mm.
Why is it so good? British humour. Why is it so good? Because it is.
So
Well,
it's so bad.
These people are literate,
Mm.
right? I mean, you get a show like Spicks and Specks, right, which is popular at the moment, and rebroadcast 20 years later, it's still popular,
Mm.
and it's good in its way. We watch it regularly. But there was a show, what the hell was the name of it now?
Auntie Jack.
No, before Auntie Jack, British radio comedians, and they're both dead. So there about 3 or 4 of them.
Benny Hill.
No, before Benny Hill. About that time, though.
2 Ronnies.
No.
Some mothers do have it.
No.
Till
Anyhow.
death do us part.
No. It was a series. But they've been emulated or repeated or attempted to be repeated in modern times. And they never used a smutty joke directly. They might have been some innuendo, but never anything gross, offensive, obscene, right? At all.
Peter Cook and Dudley Moore.
Yeah, that level. That was, what is it called?
It wouldn't have been Peter Cook and Dudley Moore.
No, it wasn't. But it
They
was
talked
that.
about toilet rolls, giving them the award.
Yeah, that's right. But it was that era, and that was brilliant British humour, and no need for the smart at all, in any way. Nothing obscene. And today, you know, Tom Gleeson is only a very.
It's not a very smutty time today, Dad, though. It was in the 70s, but it's really quite
Well,
tight these days.
That's right. But Tom Gleeson, as I just say, is not exactly extremely smutty or obscene, but he uses it. And there are others that are, it's just endless.
Cheap comedy.
And this is the part that's supposed to be so funny. I mean, what? You know, I think it's.
So why do you like Benny Hill so much?
Oh, just nothing.
There's nothing, don't tell me there's nothing smutty about Benny Hill.
Yeah, plenty of smut, but nothing obscene. Not really. Yeah, just. Anyhow, you're talking. Yes, all right. People of influence. People of influence. Well, yes, the comedians do have influence. There's no doubt about it.
Well, British culture has a massive history of using mockery of people in power to regulate and to challenge bad ideas in a very subtle, witty way.
Yeah. But did you watch the ABC last night? What was it? What's the guy that put on the yearly?
No.
What was the ABC yearly last night? The guy that put on the yearly.
Oh, Adam.
No,
I don't know him.
not Adam. It was the other guy. He's a real bloody sarcastic.
I'm stuck on YouTube now. This is just a couple
I
of days
don't
ago.
like-
I watched the BBC debate in 1979 between John Cleese and one of the other actors in Life of Brian, Muggeridge, and a Bishop of South. I can't remember where.
Yeah.
It was the televised debate about the Life of Brian. It was fantastic. But Mum was watching it and saying he would have been absolutely torn between the conservative commentator and Christian icon and
Send me the
Cleese.
link on email.
Yeah, it's a good one. I will. But yeah, John Cleese is brilliant. I've actually been so happy to see that he's really been engaged in what's been termed the American culture wars and you know, the regulation of humour and this the over political correctness in understanding it. Look, like especially in humour, it's they don't understand mockery. To mock something is now sometimes seen as to be endorsing it when you're mocking a bad idea.
Do you know that when Elsa and I were young, the American movie industry had a rule that no man and woman should ever be shown in bed unless each one had 1 foot on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, and yet they were rife behind the scenes with the gross bloody
Innuendo and suggestion.
and personal behaviour that was horrendous.
Yes.
In bed with one another all the time. Total bloody hypocrisy. At least they've come out of it a little bit now, but
That's probably been a really good thing. There's the Me Too movement and shining a light on, but especially Hollywood. It's been pretty close behind the scenes.
I don't know why they don't have a Me Too movement for men though. It's all a bit one-sided.
Oh, it has been in some regards, but I think that'll get its reckoning. Like in some areas, it went to ridiculous levels, like people complaining about a bad date, and mapping that to putting that next to hardcore rape allegations, stuff like that, and solicitation of people that you're in power over.
Yeah, it's just right.
It all got a bit blurry, which was wrong.
Absolutely. Well, you can talk about Rasputin and all these historical figures that were bad, but
I'd be fascinated to hear your take on Rasputin. My girlfriend's a Russophile and she's got this giant thick book on Rasputin.
Yes.
She just reads endlessly for the sake of
Really?
it. She's very knowledgeable.
okay. I take it that's the case. Yes. Yes. Well, it should deal well with law.
She's going into law, yeah.
I've had an experience with the law, which is absolutely horrendous in many ways, and I've often thought that I should be given the opportunity to go to the university and give a lecture to the law students about it. It's so bad.
What element?
Well, we had this family property that had been in the family well over 100 years. And my father's eldest brother, Cliff, was a fine old gentleman. And the day he left school, having passed his junior, he was enrolled to go to the local school at Warra, which had about 40 kids in it, as a student teacher. That was the way it was done. So he was a student teacher, including over 2 or 3 of his siblings, for which he's entitled to give them a cane if they didn't it, right? So that's how crude teaching was in those days. Now he married a Roman Catholic girl whose sister had also been a school teacher, based in Brisbane. And they got on fine, and she had a son, Harry, and she's the one I mentioned earlier who said, my God, not another one, I'm not going through this again ever. And when Harry was 18, he got a job in the railway, and a career. Would you like to sit again?
No, I'd like to go.
I'll tell Dad. It's okay. Come on.
I'll be with you in 5 minutes.
5 minutes. He says
Just
5
5 minutes if you want to sit.
You okay?
So,
Sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
Okay.
so he got a job on the railway, and they transferred him to Allora, which is a little small country town with a little branch line that they had to train twice a week to pick up cream cans to take back into the woman to the cheese factory.
Yep.
and he was the lad porter. And the day the train turns up, they've got a shunt, an empty wagon, flat top wagon, go up and then pick up the full top wagon. And they're doing the shunting, and he was young, 18-year-old, full of life and vigour and everything else, and he's dancing around a bit. I don't know whether it was a bit of a shower that day or not, but the cowcatcher of the steam train, he jumped on and slipped just as the thing was coming forward and went on the cowcatcher. He lived about 2 hours. Had to back the bloody train off him, you can imagine the mess.
Yeah, cut in half.
And I very well remember the day that happened. I happened to be at the farm with my grandparents when they turned up in their little old rattle-trap ute, and they wanted to borrow Granddad's A model Ford, which is a coupe, able to get them to Allora in time, and a phone call came through saying that he was dead. Well, that destroyed their lives, as you can imagine. So the two of them carried on for a while. Mabel went into deep downturn and went depressed, and she died in about age 50. Cliff was then left on his own. Well, not interested in his job, not interested in anything. He didn't want to do anything. He lived in Chinchilla, which, as you can imagine, when you live at Warra and you go anywhere, you go towards Dalby, Toowoomba, Brisbane. You don't go out to bloody old Chinchilla. Who wants to go out there, you know?
A lot of people still on horses up
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, so
That's right. That's
long,
right.
long trip.
That's right. So he lived on his own. Now, about 2070 odd, 2075, 80, 1975, about that time. He had lived on the farm that he owned, had inherited from my grandmother, his mother, who had inherited from her father. His name was George Phillips. She christened Clifford Phillips best, not Philip. Phillips. He was at the farmhouse, which is the veranda around three sides, built by home carpenters pretty much, bush carpenters, you know, not marvellous, but it's quite a nice home. No electricity, no water supply except for tanks, no phone. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, on a moonlight night, he hears a car pull up in the front yard, come driving off the road and into his area. He wondered what this is all about. And he gets a couple of guys get out of their car and they've got a rifle. They come up on the back veranda, up the back steps, and they bang on the door. Hey, Cliff, we need you here. Cliff, come out, Cliff. Now, it just so happens that he had run a few chooks. He was pretty well impoverished. No superannuation in those days. Couldn't get the pension because he owned this property, which earned him about $2,000 a year, 2,000 quid a year in that time.
Yep.
And he's living alone in the place. It's a quiet old bachelor with depression and not feeling well, largely. And he hears these young fellas come up the back veranda, singing out, "Hey, Cliff." And he had a goanna stealing the eggs out of his chicken yard. And he had a load of 22 beside the back door. So he gets out of bed, goes to the back door. "Come out here, Cliff." And they're holding this rifle. They had escaped from the lockup, the Chinchilla police lockup, bloody dickheads bunch. And they'd one guy had been in the jail and the other two had got him out, and they had decided that they're going to go to Cliff because he had an old E.H. Holden or something,
He's coming.
and he went to town once a week,
He's going to finish the story.
so they could steal his car and be interstate, West Australia, anywhere within a couple of days.
Yeah.
And nobody would know anything about him, and nobody would know even Cliff was anything wrong with him, until somebody would eventually one day say, "Where's Cliff been?" and go out and call him. They planned to shoot him.
Yeah.
I've got his police statement that he made to the police that night. He got to the back door and they're there with the rifle saying, "Get out of here." He picked up his rifle, was cocked and loaded. He's in the dark and the door didn't properly open because it's an old Queenslander and the door was stuck. So he stuck the rifle out into the moonlight and he says, "It depends who pulls the trigger first." Deathly silence. They turn on their heels and they run. Saved his own life that night. Now, you can imagine this. God, shit,
It's like
you know,
cold blood.
cold blood.
You
is-
told me that story before and it stuck with me. It's a great one.
It's terrible. So, he's got an old mate who's a cattleman and likes horses, like Cliff liked a few horses. He was involved with trying to train a racehorse when he was young and so forth. And this guy was running half a dozen horses on the property. And otherwise the property was making almost no money from about, odd $1,000 here and there from a crop. So he's boarding with this old guy in town, and this is an old bookie guy with no sense of bloody hygiene at all. Really, in a bad way, he didn't want to live. He had a heart condition, so he stopped taking the heart condition. He stopped taking the tablets and swelled up. His legs began to swell, his thighs began to swell. Next thing, he's got a permanent erection because of the swelling due to not taking the heart tablets. So they rushed him off to hospital. So, oh God, Cliff's seriously ill. He's in hospital in Brisbane, in Prince Charles. Yeah, that's right. So we go up to see him, and he's recovered somewhat. And I go up to see him, and he's sitting on the veranda. He looks out across the outside, and he says, "What would it cost to buy a house here?" Because he had a couple of old friends who lived not far away, and he had me and other family living in Brisbane. I said, "Oh, it cost you about $30,000. $30,000, eh?" He says, Next thing I know, a couple of weeks later, he's back. He's still in hospital, and he says to Dad, "I've got a man who's prepared to
We've got to wrap up.
who's prepared to pay me $30,000 for the property, and I want to sell it." And Dad says, "You bloody mad? Don't want a story? Will you please sign the contract?" So I signed an order. Cliff signed for his brother to sign the contract on his behalf, $30,000 for the property. Signed the contract, and Dad left a couple of blank spaces between paragraphs on a handwritten thing, right?
Yeah.
And the bloody crooked agent inserted two clauses. This contract is subject to sale of portion 2V. Just that sentence. When you look at it closely, it's block lettered, but the block letters are all, and that clause, slightly slanted compared to the others. It's been written at a different time. 6 years later,
Was that in handwriting as well?
it was in block lettered handwriting.
It's a court case, Philip. Little there, I can fill you in, but Mum wants to go, and I think we have to wrap this up.
Okay. So we went to court, and we had a family friend who was a solicitor, and his daughter had a serious medical episode about this time, and he had to hand the case over to a new law. I don't know whether he graduated. I think he just graduated, but he's a city guy. Well, a case in the Supreme Court in front of him.
You going to talk to him?
It's Walter Campbell. Shit, hey, this will be good. Just a court case for him. Him, Doesn't matter who's going to win. Didn't bother to take any details about what a mongrel the bloody agent was, because we could prove that he was a mongrel. He'd done other things. And the guy who bought the place was also so bad he had 3 houses rented, but he used to go and collect the rent in cash every week and store it in jam tins around his property.
Hmm.
Anyhow, we lost the court case.